There's a certain kind of person who spends the first half of their life feeling slightly out of step with the world. They were the child who thought too much, the student who understood the material but froze when asked to compete for it, the young adult who watched their louder, faster friends collect promotions, followers, and applause while they stayed quietly in the background, sensing something the others couldn't yet see. If that person has ever been you, this video may explain something you felt your whole life but never had the words for. Because according to the psychology of Carl Jung, the rarest personality type on Earth is not built to peak early. It is built to arrive late, and when it finally does, it tends to arrive with a depth the early bloomers never reach. Let's talk about why. Carl Jung was one of the founding minds of modern psychology, and one of his lasting contributions was the idea that human beings are not blank slates. We are born oriented in different directions. Some of us turn naturally outward, toward people and action and the external world. Some of us turn naturally inward, toward meaning, pattern, and reflection. From Jung's early framework of psychological types, later thinkers mapped out the personality profiles many of us recognize today. And out of all of them, one consistently shows up as the rarest, a quiet, intuitive, deeply feeling introvert. The kind of person who processes life at a level beneath the surface, and often can't explain how they simply know things about people and situations before the evidence arrives. This is the person who feels like an outsider, not because something is wrong with them, but because there are so few others wired the same way. And here's the strange paradox at the center of this personality. When you are 22, the world rewards speed, confidence, quick answers, the ability to sell yourself in a room. And the rarest type is almost allergic to all of it. They don't want to perform. They want to understand. They don't want to win the argument. They want to find the truth underneath it. So early in life, they lose, quietly, repeatedly, and they begin to wonder if there is a place for them at all. Jung had a powerful way of describing the human lifespan. He divided it roughly into two halves, what he called the morning of life and the afternoon of life. The morning of life, he observed, is about building the outer structure, career, status, identity, fitting into the machine of society and proving you can survive inside it. It's loud, competitive, and external, and Jung believed you cannot live the afternoon of life by the same rules as the morning. Now imagine being a person whose deepest gifts are inward: intuition, empathy, insight, long-range vision, and being dropped into a morning of life that measures everyone by outward performance. That's the hidden reason so many rare-type people struggle early. It isn't a lack of talent, it's a mismatch of timing. Their gifts are real, but they are slow-release gifts. They ripen. They require experience, pain, reflection, and years of quietly watching how the world actually works. You can't rush wisdom, and wisdom is this type's entire superpower, so in their 20s, they often feel like they're failing. They change directions, they quit things other people think they should have stuck with. They feel everything intensely and burn out from carrying emotions that aren't even theirs. They watch peers who seem so much more sure of everything, and they mistake that certainty for success. But something is happening underneath all that struggle. They are collecting raw material. Every disappointment, every observation, every quiet night spent thinking instead of celebrating, it's all being stored. And one day, it compounds. Individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are. Not the person your parents wanted, not the mask you wore to survive school or the workplace, but your actual integrated self. Jung believed this process rarely completes in youth. It belongs to the afternoon of life. It's the work of the second half. And for the rarest personality type, individuation isn't just a nice idea. It's the entire plot of their life. Here's why this matters for late success. They reach the top of the ladder and quietly realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. But the rare type usually can't coast, even if they try. Their inner world is too loud. That restlessness, that sense of there has to be more than this, is the exact engine that pushes them into deeper development while everyone else plateaus. So while the early bloomers are peaking at 30 and slowly declining, the rare type is just getting started. In their late 30s, 40s, and beyond, all those years of observation and feeling and reflection begin to fuse into something rare: genuine wisdom, the ability to see patterns others miss, to understand people at a glance, to create work with real emotional depth, to lead not with volume, but with presence. This is the moment the outsider becomes the visionary. We live in a culture obsessed with early achievement, 30 under 30 lists, teenage founders, the myth that if you haven't made it by a certain age, you've somehow missed your window. Jung's psychology quietly dismantles that myth. Because the success that comes early is often built on a borrowed identity, the goals we absorbed from other people before we knew ourselves. But the success that comes late, after individuation, is built on something unshakable, a person who finally knows who they are. That's the difference between fame and mastery, between a moment and a legacy. Think about how many of the world's most meaningful contributions, books, companies, discoveries, works of art, came from people well into the second half of their lives. Not because they were slow, but because their work required a depth of self that only time could build. For the rarest personality type, late success isn't a consolation prize. It is the natural shape of their entire existence. The struggle in the morning wasn't wasted. It was the foundation. Every year that felt like falling behind was actually the slow construction of something the early bloomers will never have. A self that is whole. And once that self comes online, the same person who couldn't find their place in the world suddenly becomes the person other people come to for answers. So if you recognize yourself in all of this, the sensitivity, the intuition, the feeling of being a few years or a few dimensions out of sync with everyone around you, here's what Jung's psychology would gently ask you to remember. First, stop measuring your morning by other people's clocks. Your timeline is not broken. It's just longer, and it's building towards something most people never reach. Second, protect your inner life, the reflection, the solitude, the deep thinking that the world calls too much, that is not your weakness. Third, keep individuating, keep peeling back the masks, keep asking who you actually are underneath the roles you were handed. Because the moment your outer life finally aligns with your true inner self is the moment your late success stops being a possibility and starts becoming inevitable. You were never behind. You were becoming. Carl Jung believed that the goal of a human life was not to stay young or to win the morning. It was to become whole, to spend the afternoon of your life expressing the self you spent the morning discovering. The rarest personality type struggles early because the world isn't built for them yet. But give them time, give them the second half, and they don't just catch up, they become the people the rest of us remember. So if your success has been slow in arriving, take heart. You may simply be one of the rare ones, and the rare ones were never meant to bloom in spring. They were meant to bloom in autumn, when everything they've gathered finally turns to gold. If this spoke to something in you, take a quiet moment before you move on. Sit with it. And if you'd like more reflections like this, you know where to find us. Here, at Mindful Patterns.